quick Father's Day greeting before we jump in: Happy Father's Day to the dads, the granddads, the stepdads, the uncles, the mentors, and the people who show up with steady advice when the room gets loud. I hope your weekend had good food, good calls, and at least one moment where nobody asked you to fix the Wi-Fi. Now let's get to the AI board. This is the Saturday through Monday sprint, the United States moving from model hype into enterprise deployment and cyber defense, China turning AI into consumption, robotics, and even space compute, Europe debating whether it needs to move faster, and the Five Eyes Alliance warning that AI cyber risk has crossed into leadership territory. The headline is simple: AI just entered geopolitics mode, and the mood is not doom. It is urgency, opportunity, and a lot of builders getting very busy. The first big US signal is OpenAI's own news slate. On Monday, OpenAI had 3 themes stacked together: security, enterprise adoption, and long-running work. That matters because it shows where AI is going after the chatbot phase. The next product category is not just a smarter answer box. It is a workbench that can remember context, move across tasks, and help teams finish things that normally take hours, days, or weeks. Patch the Planet is the clearest example. OpenAI describes it as a daybreak initiative with trail of bits to help open-source maintainers find, validate, and fix vulnerabilities. That is a sharp story for viewers because it turns the usual AI security fear on its head. Yes, AI can accelerate attackers. But it can also give defenders more leverage, especially maintainers who are already overloaded. The upbeat read is this: the internet's shared infrastructure is finally getting AI muscle, plus human review, pointed at the boring but critical patch loop. The second signal is Samsung. OpenAI says Samsung Electronics is bringing ChatGPT Enterprise and Codex to all Samsung Electronics employees in Korea and all device experience employees worldwide. That is one of OpenAI's largest enterprise deployments to date, and it is not just for software engineers. The announced use cases reach across R&D, manufacturing, marketing, product development, corporate functions, and internal tools. This is the kind of story that makes AI feel real. We have spent years watching benchmark charts and model demos. But when a global manufacturing giant pushes AI into everyday workflows, the question changes. It becomes: how many meetings become drafts, how many spreadsheets become analyses, how many product ideas become prototypes, and how many internal tools get built by teams that never had a software backlog before. That is why the Samsung story is upbeat. It is AI leaving the lab and walking onto the factory floor, the design desk, and the manager's dashboard. Cyber is the main stage now. OpenAI's Daybreak update talks about GPT 5.5, Cyber, trusted access for defenders, Codex security, and a full remediation loop: identify, validate, patch, test, and prepare evidence for human review. That is exactly the workflow security teams care about. More findings are not enough. The win is fewer reachable bugs in production. Then the Five Eyes story adds urgency. Signals agencies from Australia, the United States, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and Canada warned that frontier AI could transform cyber offense and defense on a timeline measured in months, not years. That sounds intense, but the useful takeaway is not panic. It is prioritization. Cyber risk is no longer just an IT ticket. It is business continuity, market confidence, and leadership responsibility. The positive version of that story is powerful. The same AI acceleration that raises the threat level can also compress the fix cycle for defenders who organize early. China's Monday story is very different from the US story, and that is what makes it interesting. Caixin reports that 8 Chinese ministries issued guidelines to boost AI-driven consumption through smart terminals, robotics, brain-computer interfaces, eldercare, and retail. That is not just a model leaderboard story. It is an adoption story. It says, Put AI into things people buy, services people use, and sectors where demographics and labor pressure are already forcing change. This fits the larger China pattern. Stanford's 2026 AI Index says the US-China model performance gap has effectively closed, with the two countries trading the lead since early 2025. But China's advantage is not only models. It is industrial deployment, publications, patents, robotics, and a policy system that can point companies toward national priorities. The upbeat takeaway for builders is clear: the AI race is becoming an implementation race. The winners will not be the countries that only announce models. They will be the ones that turn models into products, factories, services, and useful daily routines. The most cinematic China story is space compute. Tom's Hardware reported Saturday that Beijing approved a space computing industry innovation center aimed at bringing together rocket and satellite manufacturers, semiconductor fabs, and AI companies to build a space computing network. The planned work areas include space-native chips, high-performance payloads, satellite platforms, space-based large models under power constraints, and integrated space-ground cloud networks. Now, this is early and ambitious. Orbiting data centers are not easy. Cooling, launch cost, maintenance, latency, radiation, and hardware reliability are serious engineering problems. But the strategic signal is loud. AI infrastructure is no longer just a question of who has the biggest data center in Texas or the cheapest power contract. It is becoming a question of where compute can live. On land. Near energy. At sea. Maybe eventually in orbit. That makes the AI infrastructure race feel less like cloud expansion and more like a new logistics map for intelligence. Europe's weekend story is a wake-up call. The Guardian covered a viral thought experiment called Europe 2031, a scenario warning that Europe could be squeezed between a fast-moving United States and an industrially aggressive China if it fails to build data centers, adopt AI, and create its own strategic capacity. The piece is intentionally dramatic, and some of its assumptions are debated. But it landed because Europe is already asking a real question: who controls the compute, models, and rules that European companies will depend on? This is where Europe gets interesting. The EU is not abandoning regulation. The European Commission's AI-generated content transparency code points toward marking, detection, and labeling obligations under the AI Act. But the sovereignty debate says compliance alone is not enough. Europe also needs adoption, infrastructure, startups, and public sector competence. The optimistic version is that Europe could become the place where trustworthy AI actually scales. But it has to build faster, not just write smarter rules. Step back and the map is clean. The United States is pushing AI deeper into enterprise work, software security, and trusted cyber workflows. China is pushing AI into consumption, robotics, industrial platforms, and maybe eventually space-based infrastructure. Europe is trying to balance rules with urgency, transparency with competitiveness, and sovereignty with global cooperation. That is why today's title is Edge, but not cynical. AI just entered geopolitics mode. The model race is still there, but it is no longer the whole game. The game is who can deploy safely, who can patch faster, who can bring workers along, who can build enough compute, who can set rules that people trust, and who can turn AI into economic energy without losing control of the steering wheel. For creators, founders, operators, and viewers, this is good news. It means there are more useful stories than just another leaderboard. There are workflows to improve, tools to build, and very real problems to solve. Here is the builder playbook for this week. First, pick one workflow that is bigger than a prompt. Not a cute demo. A real process: sales research, code review, test generation, vulnerability triage, procurement analysis, content production, customer support, or internal reporting. Break it into steps, decide where AI can help, and decide where a human needs to sign off. Second, stop treating governance as the enemy of speed. Good controls can make AI adoption faster because they tell people where the lanes are. That is the lesson across Samsung, Daybreak, Patch the Planet, and Europe's transparency work. The winning teams will not be the reckless teams or the frozen teams. They will be the teams that move quickly with review, logging, spend visibility, and clear responsibility. Third, put cyber on the leadership calendar. If AI makes attacks faster, then patching, evidence, and resilience need to get faster too. That is a business workflow now. Bottom line, this weekend did not feel like a slow news cycle. It felt like the next layer of AI becoming visible. The US story is enterprise scale and cyber defense. The China story is adoption, robotics, infrastructure, and ambition. The Europe story is sovereignty, transparency, and the pressure to build. The Five Eyes story is the warning label: if AI changes the speed of offense, every serious organization has to change the speed of defense. But the episode is upbeat because the path forward is not mysterious. Build useful workflows. Give people secure tools. Patch shared infrastructure. Label synthetic content. Invest in compute without ignoring communities. Route models by cost and risk. Keep humans in the loop where stakes are high. That is acceleration with a steering wheel. And for anyone building, learning, investing, or just trying to understand the week, this is the part where AI stops being abstract and starts becoming the operating layer of the world economy.